The Nameless Echo. From chaos, shadows awaken.
Incense battles sump smog in Basilica Registry H17. Sacred smoke losing ground to industrial exhaust through cracked ventilators. Couples queue beneath oil-stained aquilers and stained glass depicting saints as foremen, their halos cog-toothed, their hands blessing production quotas. Each pair clutches stamped vellum damp with sweat and machine oil. The bride before us extends her hand, ration tally ink still wet across her palm, tracking this week's protein allotment. On her finger, a ring hammered from scrap metal catches votive lumens. Behind her, servo skulls drift through incense haze, scanning biometrics while Arbeits observers log facial recognition data. This is marriage in the 41st millennium. Not romance, not sanctuary, a production contract. Marriage in Hive cities represents the alignment of bodies to quotas, the activation of surveillance nodes, the cataloguing of reproductive potential. The right confers rations, housing, and legitimacy, but these are not gifts. They are advances against output. The chancel rail separates hunger from conditional sufficiency, anonymity from accountability. Clerks in grey robes pass two stamped marriage tokens from blessing forges, metallic discs bearing Aquila seals and cogitator-readable strips. Without them, ration dispensers cough dust. With them, couples access shared housing tiers and Medicaid privileges. Keys to survival, not symbols of love. The administrative framework operates through the Lex Connugium, edition 712 for this cluster, defining households as fortresses to be tithed and audited. Its cornerstone is Clause 44b, co-liability of spouses. The language is dry, the implications total. One partner's missed shifts burden both. One partner's infractions condemn both. Confessors call it mutual guardianship. Administratum officers term it efficient risk distribution. Those in line know what it feels like. A chain that holds tightest when one stumbles. Our documentary will climb from sump to spire, examining how the Imperium transforms human connection into logistical efficiency. We will ascend through mid-hive manufactoria to spire parlors where vows purchase shipping lanes, then descend through enforcement mechanisms, audit protocols, and punishment systems that answer to the word protection. The constancy between levels is not faith, but ledger logic. The bride's hand trembles as she signs. Ink mingles with tally marks, already staining her skin. The registry clerk stamps their certificate with mechanical precision, sound echoing off cathedral walls where production schedules hang beside prayer scrolls. The couple receives their tokens, metal still warm from forge blessing. They move toward exit doors, past new queues forming in the hive's perpetual twilight. Their certificate joins millions in administratum archives, not records of joy but entries measuring bodies, counting wombs, calculating the human cost of imperial protection. What exactly does Clause 44b entail, and how is it weaponized against couples? Who profits when two lives become bound by ledger rather than love? We proceed as field ethnographers within a devout bureaucracy. Our evidence emerges from administratum archive edicts, their parchment stained with promethium and decades of handling. Parish ledgers, where confessors reconcile vows with births, deaths, and quota shortfalls. Manufactoria rosters tracking shift pairs, medical exemptions, and widow reallocations. Hab warden interviews conducted in whispered conversations between patrol rounds. When sources converge, patterns emerge. When they contradict, the gaps reveal as much as the data. At the Investigations Center stands Lex Connugium 7/12, the local recension of imperial marriage code ratified after the Horus heresy to reverse catastrophic depopulation and restore tithe capacity. Its origins trace to demographic collapse, when civil war consumed entire generation cohorts, leaving manufactoria understaffed and recruitment pools depleted. The ecclesiarchy and administratum forged this framework around the theological concept of household as fortress, the smallest defensible unit of faith and output. The text reads liturgical in cadence, logistical in intent. It defines eligibility thresholds, assigns ration multipliers, prescribes audit schedules. It couples sacrament to census. Our analytical framework examines each social stratum through 4 consistent lenses: daily function, how marriage operates in material reality, bunk assignments, protein distribution, shift rotations, control mechanism, surveillance systems, reporting requirements, audit protocols that transform intimacy into accountability nodes, survival tax, costs extracted from couples seeking legitimacy, bribes, penalties, service obligations, medical procedures, spiritual and moral cost, psychological toll when systematic dehumanization wears sacred language. 2 elements demand particular attention throughout our investigation. First, the silent index, a rumored registry of unwed adults who disappear from HAB rosters without transfer orders or death certificates. HAB wardens speak carefully of monthly quotas, empty bunks reassigned within hours, transport manifests bearing no destination codes. Second, womb cog counters, biometric seals installed during marriage registration under Medici auspices, ostensibly monitoring reproductive health. Their data streams remain classified, but requisition records suggest purposes beyond maternal care. Our scope carries limitations. Spire archives remain sealed behind noble privilege and courteous Arbeits cordons. Underhive communities preserve marriage customs in oral traditions, resistant to imperial documentation until enforcement raids drag them into official ledgers. Mid-hive manufactoria provide the richest sources, workers tracked from birth certificate to burial permit, their unions catalogued with industrial precision. The registry office doors bear aquilus blackened by centuries of oil and incense. Beyond them, clerks process human connection through administrative machinery designed to serve imperial logistics rather than human aspiration. Each stamped certificate represents data points in calculations measuring birth rates, mortality projections, tithe obligations, recruitment potential. The silent index. Where do the unwed disappear to? What hidden purpose do womb cog counters serve beyond medical care? Doctrine weaves incense with ink, theology with logistics. The ecclesiarchy and administratum speak through unified voice, their vocabularies different, but their purpose singular. Sacred texts and administrative manuals converge on marriage as imperial instrument rather than human sanctuary. The Catechism defines unions as 2 souls yoked to the emperor's labor, sanctifying obedience and fecundity while establishing divine mandate for productivity quotas. Sermons promise protection within the household fortress. Forms specify the surveillance required to maintain its walls. Ecclesiarchal doctrine transforms intimacy into devotion. Parish catechisms declare married couples fortress paired against heresy and want, blessed in their submission to tithe and service. The conjugal bed becomes forge where loyal citizens are hammered into being. Fertility represents devotion, measured in offspring quotas. Barrenness suggests spiritual failure requiring Medici intervention or penitential reassignment. Love appears nowhere in official theology. Compatibility means complementary shift schedules and shared ration efficiency. Administratum policy reduces sacred unions to predictable throughput calculations. Standard marriage contracts specify 2 workers sharing housing allocation. Staggered shifts preventing simultaneous absence from production lines. Projected offspring quotas based on genetic screening and nutrition tier assessments. Form 77B calculates housing upgrades from single bunks to double-width sleeping alcoves. Ration increases accounting for shared consumption patterns. Medici privileges extending to reproductive monitoring. The mathematics prove elegant. The human cost remains unmentioned in ledger margins. Parish manuals distribute theological imperatives with administrative precision. Chapter of Domestic Pieties contains recurring language across every edition. Report deviation within the household. Deviation encompasses missed shifts, unlicensed medical care, unsanctioned guests, concealed sickness, contraceptive rumors, ideological variance. The manual pairs with Form 9B, Domestic Variance Report, triplicate sheets issued at registry completion. Spouses receive instruction to submit reports within 48 hours or face complicity charges under Clause 44B. Enforcement mechanisms operate through household audits conducted by purity officers, lay functionaries in dun habits carrying Auspex scanners and clipboards. They verify cohabitation against bed assignment logs, examine purity seals, above door frames, compare confession entries to ration withdrawal patterns. Officers count toothbrushes, note warmth distribution on bunks, lift sheets to verify bed frame pressure marks align with registered occupants. Audit failures risk ration downgrades, eviction from double bunks, reassignment to split-shift barracks. The concept of dowry in shifts converts matrimonial custom into production obligation. Families prepay labor hours, typically 200 shifts, directly to manufactoria foremen, cementing unions to output quotas before vows conclude. Conjugal dispensations reveal policy priorities with clinical clarity. In high attrition sectors where mortality exceeds replacement rates, married couples receive Medicare-sanctioned conception windows coordinated with production cycles. WombCog counters monitor compliance, their data streams feeding administratum projections of future workforce availability. The contradiction stands stark between pulpit promises and policy implementation. Confessors proclaim marriage sanctity while requiring spousal denunciation systems. Sacred vows pledge mutual support, while Clause 44B ensures mutual punishment for individual infractions. The household fortress concept inverts. Spouses become wardens monitoring each other for the state. Intimacy transformed into accountability nodes, serving imperial surveillance networks. How are household denunciations processed? And what triggers them? What penalties await refusal or delay of marriage registration? Stairwells serve as holding pens outside Registry H17. Concrete steps slick with condensation and boot grease. Couples coil along the queue beneath oil-blackened aquillas, vellum forms pressed against chests to prevent moisture damage. The air thickens with recycled breath and industrial exhaust seeping through cracked ventilators. Hours crawl past in mechanical increments, 20 minutes per couple, processed through stations like components in an assembly sequence. Scrip changes hands in whispered transactions. A brass grill marked expedited sanctification accepts 15 throne gelt above standard fees, purchasing priority processing and reduced waiting periods. Veterans share survival knowledge with newcomers. 2 LHO sticks to clerks ensure genetic screening delays disappear. Machine oil lubricates housing assignment reviews. Medicaid-grade alcohol guarantees favorable fertility assessments. Clerks in grey robes accept payments with practiced discretion, while servo skulls hover overhead, recording transactions for audit purposes. At Station Tertius, Officio Medicae, adepts conduct biological verification. Auspex scanners probe genetic markers, mutation indices, fertility potential, disease resistance with mechanical precision. Blood samples disappear into cogitator analysis chambers, while couples wait in metal chairs bolted to deck plating. The machinery reads bodies like production specifications, measuring reproductive capacity against imperial requirements. Rejection notices print on parchment reeking of ozone and disappointment. We observe a manufactoria pair summoned to Booth 7, listening as clerks cite genetic redundancy. Their bloodlines too similar for optimal offspring production quotas. They receive celibacy bonds instead of marriage certificates, stamped tin documents locking rations at single tier permanently while prohibiting future applications. Their faces remain unchanged. Practice has taught them to grieve while standing motionless. Approved couples advance to Station Quartus for WombCog installation. Medicae adepts insert blessed biometric seals beneath skin. Devices smaller than fingernails, but dense with monitoring capability. The procedure requires local anesthetic and prayer, while Arbeits observers log installation confirmations. WombCogs pulse with soft light visible through skin, pinging cogitators with cycle data, hormone fluctuations, conception indicators, miscarriage records. Bodies become Imperial property, subject to reproductive surveillance. Housing upgrades represent marginal improvements over single accommodations. Double bunks remain metal drawers stacked in dormitory walls, but width increases 18 inches, and heating elements receive priority power allocation. Ration increases prove more substantial. Protein allotments rise 40%. Vitamin supplements become available. Medicaid access expands to reproductive care. These benefits require 2 stamp tokens, metallic discs issued at ceremony conclusion. Without them, dispensers recognize only single-tier entitlements, coughing dust instead of sustenance. Clause 44b appears in full text on every marriage contract, printed in Gothic script beneath sacred seals. Clerks read aloud with monotonous precision. Spouses shall bear co-liability for criminal infractions, quota shortfalls, ideological variance, Medicaid non-compliance, and administrative violations committed by either party. Penalties shall apply equally regardless of individual culpability. The language transforms partnership into shared vulnerability. One partner's missed shifts trigger ration cuts for both. One partner's confession irregularities result in double penance assignments. Certificates emerge from blessing forges with ink still wet, smelling of iron and sacred oils. Approved couples file toward exit doors marked processing complete, while denied pairs learn to stand motionless, allowing the queue to flow around them like water around stones. Behind both groups, new lines form in perpetual cycles, the machinery grinding forward to transform human connection into administrative data, serving imperial logistics. What parallel rights exist where imperial papers cannot reach? When womb cog counters signal irregularities, who responds? Imperial authority weakens in the underhive like lumens failing in poisoned air. Where administratum clerks cannot venture, where servo skulls choke on industrial smog, marriage adapts to survival economics through rituals unmarked by stamped vellum. Here, the lex connugium becomes distant rumor, replaced by claim bonds that bind lives through necessity rather than sacrament. Heated pipe rings replace registry certificates. Scavenger pairs press crude metal circles into flesh, while witnesses time the contact, ensuring skin seals around iron. The ceremony burns ownership into bone-deep scars. Ammunition exchanges complete the ritual, 12 stub rounds or 2 shells arranged on cracked plates. Currency more valuable than imperial scrip in territories where violence determines legitimacy. Under broken lumens, couples trade scrap belts for vows, while redemptionist firebrands serve as witnesses, their zealotry substituting for ordained priests. These self-appointed prophets demand their own tithes, purity oaths sworn on improvised altars built from twisted metal and refuse, first child pledges to redemptionist compounds for indoctrination as future crusaders. Their theology adapts imperial doctrine to underhive reality, sanctifying unions through flame rather than incense, blessing survival pacts rather than romantic bonds. Control mechanisms operate through immediate violence rather than bureaucratic penalty. Wives become hostages securing gang debts, their claim bonds transferring between crews like promissory notes written in flesh. When matrimonial obligations exceed payment capacity, husbands face conscription into raids or forced labor. The economics prove brutally efficient. Marriage creates leverage over individuals through their partners, ensuring compliance with gang hierarchies through emotional bonds rather than legal contracts. Survival taxes extract payment in underhive currencies. Bride prices demand Prometheum coupons, their edges singed to prove authenticity, or territorial concessions to gang leadership. Widow shelter dormitories provide protection for bereaved women. The same gangs operating both matrimonial markets and bereavement services, profiting from human connection and its dissolution. Protection costs escalate monthly, while alternatives remain non-existent beyond imperial law. Clanvince branding ring marks unions through ritual scarification, heated metal pressed into shoulders bearing the gang's territorial sigil. These scars serve dual purposes: matrimonial ceremony and ownership documentation. The pattern encodes debt and status, notches for dowry shortfalls, crosshatches for disciplinary seizure, circles for widowhood under protection. Couples bearing Vint brands belong to the clan's economic structure, their labor and reproductive capacity claimed by gang hierarchy. Moral costs escalate as underhive economics reduce children to balance sheet items. Parents sell offspring to manufacturer guilds as apprentices. Debt relief purchased through familial separation. The transactions occur at territorial boundaries where underhive gangs interface with sanctioned commerce, human trafficking disguised as employment placement services. Missing girls' rumors harden into documented routes. Debtors report sudden mercy. Chits stamped satisfied. Carriages promised for orientation. Night carries unmarked trucks to Sally Gates while wives vanish from gang territories. Guild compounds absorb them into worker populations bearing forged documentation. Their underhive marriages dissolve through administrative convenience. The debt trail leads upward through territorial boundaries, connecting sump-level survival packs to mid-hive labor markets, where matrimonial obligations become recruitment mechanisms. How do guilds convert matrimonial debt into labor contracts? What fate awaits underhive wives crossing into sanctioned territory? Manufacturer foremen operate as marriage brokers with production schedules to meet. Behind wire mesh windows overlooking assembly floors, they examine productivity records and genetic assessments like equipment specifications. The conversion from underhive chaos to sanctioned labor occurs through matrimonial contracts. Clan brands disappear beneath guild sleeves, while promissory notes become work advances, redeemable only on production lines. Foremen praise the arrangement for stabilizing throughput. Paired bodies bolt less frequently than singles. The dowry system transforms matrimonial tradition into labor obligation. Bride families prepay 200 hours directly to guild coffers, purchasing placement in shared line teams where married couples work adjacent stations. The mathematics prove elegant. Couples maintain staggered shifts ensuring continuous coverage. Shared housing reduces accommodation costs. Reproductive monitoring enables workforce projection. Grooms contribute through extended service contracts, binding them to 5-year terms with penalty clauses preventing transfer or accumulated sick leave. Housing consists of double lockers welded into dormitory walls, metal compartments barely wider than coffins, but sufficient for 2 bodies arranged efficiently. The lumens never fully extinguish, casting perpetual twilight through recycled air, thick with machine oil and human exhalation. Shift sirens punctuate sleep cycles, while floor vibrations follow schedules older than the couples occupying bunks. Privacy exists only during shift changes, intimacy measured in shared warmth between whistles. Control mechanisms operate through line leads carrying conjugal dispensation chits, stamped permits regulating reproductive timing to match production cycles. Conception windows open during low output periods when worker absence creates minimal disruption. To request dispensation requires queuing like supplicants. Couples ask for 48 sanctioned hours, leads check quota forecasts and Medicaid clearances. Foremen assess tolerance for future absenteeism. Pregnancy outside authorized intervals triggers penalty assessments and housing downgrades to single accommodations. Officio Medicaid monitors reproductive cycles through womb-cog data streams, logging conception rates and gestation progress with mechanical precision. Stillbirths appear in ledgers as waste, failed production runs requiring disposal through standard protocols alongside scrap metal and defective rivets. Weekly reports circulate projecting replacement workers, realized births, unproductive conception windows. Bodies become imperial property subject to reproductive surveillance, serving workforce planning rather than medical care. Survival taxes pit sanction Medicaid against black market alternatives. Guild clinics provide ration supplements, powdered protein, iron tablets, exclusively upon confirmed conception. Desperate couples seek underground midwives in laundry alcoves, paying promethium coupons for womb cog removal or pregnancy termination. Infection follows crude procedures, while redemptionists chase antiseptic scents, leaving scorched sheets and chalk marks on doors. Discovery triggers immediate contract termination and territorial expulsion. Spiritual costs manifest through confessors offering quota-miss absolution for couples whose productivity falls below matrimonial projections. Penance requires extra shifts, typically 40 hours monthly until performance metrics improve. Prayer becomes productivity measurement, devotion calculated through output statistics rather than theological understanding. Some couples trade penances like favors, while Clause 44b ensures both debts are paid regardless. Posted throughout dormitory levels, thick vellum notices announce the rite of binding, mass form, thousands processed simultaneously during upcoming production surges. Wax seals overlap like armored scales, while fine print lists feedstock arrival times, housing reassignments, Medici stations, Arbeitscordons. The logistics read like factory shutdown schedules masquerading as sacrament, suggesting purposes beyond matrimonial blessing. At industrial scale, what changes in the rite, and what is revealed? Who stands beside priests on the ceremonial dais? Cathedral Factory H' stretches 3 kilometers beneath Gothic arches, conveyor belts silenced like sleeping predators. 10,000 couples stand in ranked files on painted floor grids, each square measuring human potential in imperial units. Stained glass depicts saints operating manufactoria machinery, their gear-toothed halos blessing production quotas, while vox hymns beat mechanical time through speakers mounted on flying buttresses. Incense battles, industrial exhaust in perpetual stalemate. Administratum scribes in grey robes occupy elevated platforms, cogitator terminals streaming womb cog data in cascading amber text. Every ping registers across the VoxNet, green, green, amber, green, fertility windows and genetic compatibility rendered as tidy columns. Quills tick against blessed parchment, while servo skulls drift overhead, blessing and auditing without distinction. Arbites form containment cordons at nave and transepts, shock mauls visible beneath riot visors that reflect lumens like insect eyes. Confessors lead call and response vows from pulpits equipped with vox amplifiers. "Two as fortress," they intone. "Two as fortress," 10,000 voices reply. Clause 44. B amplifies until language becomes abstraction, co-liability for infractions, shortfalls, variants, droning white noise that settles into bone. Sacred liturgy welds to economic function through repetition until meaning dissolves into synchronized sound. A groom in file 7043 rubs his 2-stamp token until skin reddens. His bride's Medica tag flashes persistent amber, irregular cycles flagged for watchful care. Behind them, scribes update the silent index with mechanical precision, names shifting from matrimonial candidate to administrative reassignment through keystrokes that erase identity. Stragglers extracted from lines disappear through doors bearing administratum seals, their absence absorbed by automatic spacing adjustments. Near ration dispensers, a minor crush develops as couples surge toward first joint meal allocations. Shock maul deployment follows immediately, crackling energy arcing through air, training 10,000 bodies to reflexive stillness. The lesson proves efficient. Celebration submits to order. Joy operates within prescribed parameters. Tokens represent privilege rather than right. Post-vow processing reveals systematic function. Cogitators update ration tiers instantaneously, while housing reassignments stream across data screens. Medici appointments schedule automatically based on womb cog readings. Recruiters wearing PDF insignia occupy observation galleries, marking robust couples through subtle green lumens, targeting genetic profiles and productivity records compiled during matrimonial processing. The sequence climaxes as newlyweds approach exit doors expecting conjugal quarters. Selected couples receive escort through passages marked auxiliar processing for voluntary service. Arbites guide them with gentle but inexorable pressure, while confessors offer blessing for their sacred duty. The chosen disappear behind blast doors, bearing warning sigils as remaining couples file toward dormitory assignments, their tokens already updated with service obligations. The revelation crystallizes like ice forming in recycled air. Marriage functions as recruitment mechanism disguised as sacrament, the mass rite operating as census and mobilization tool, cataloguing bodies for imperial logistics, while sanctifying conscription through religious ceremony. Love becomes ledger entry. Union transforms into utilization. Sacred vows mask systematic harvesting of human resources. The cathedral factory returns to its true purpose, processing raw material for the emperor's endless war machine. Do noble houses submit to identical quotas, or author their own exemptions? Why were select couples diverted immediately after vows? Crystalline vaults replace. Cathedral factories as ascension lifts groan towards spire levels, where recycled air carries imported incense rather than machine oil. Here marriage operates as statecraft conducted in chambers where adamantium-laced windows filter starlight into prismatic patterns. Noble houses trade children across banquet tables like shipping manifests, securing Prometheum franchises and Arbites indulgences through bloodline contracts. The machinery remains identical, human bodies measured for imperial utility, but wealth drapes calculations in silk, while servants absorb consequences. Gene purity advisors replace officio medicae functionaries, their augmetic abashi calculating pedigrees across 10 generations rather than installing womb cogs beneath noble skin. Private chaplains conduct ceremonies with secret contractual riders stitched into blessed vellum. Concubine allowances for dynastic insurance, assassin truces binding vendetta cults to temporary silence, territorial exemptions written in cipher between sacred verses. The vows sound familiar: fortress, duty, fecundity, but annexes transform obligation into privilege through purchased interpretation. Hypocrisy acquires systematic precision through exemption purchasing. Noble houses buy releases from Clause 44b via ancient charters and fresh donations, their matrimonial contracts specifying household liability, transference to domestic staff. When noble spouses commit infractions or miss quotas, penalties fall upon stewards, nurses, and menials. Co-liability floats downward until it rests where resistance proves weakest. The fortress concept inverts. Walls become servants while nobility remains untouchable within. Survival taxes transform into capital investments. Dowries consist of voidship shares, plasma foundry stakes, and bulk hauler consortium percentages rather than shift-hour payments. The second-born solution provides tidier population control than lower Hive conscription. Excess heirs transferred to scholar progenium for service. Their surnames dissolved in catechism, while ledgers note charitable offerings. Heir brokers, quiet functionaries with Auspex eyes, consult on quota circumvention, arranging indulgence bundles that neutralize inconvenient statutes through strategic timing and auditor distractions. A rare spire scandal illuminates systematic diversion when House Ventris faced investigation over missionary orphanages, reporting surplus noble children bearing forged documentation. The inquiry revealed coordinated transfers. Excess offspring relocated off-world. Their imperial headcount obligations satisfied through purchased indulgences, while actual bodies disappeared into private education systems. Ecclesiastical charity masked demographic manipulation serving house solvency rather than imperial devotion. The pattern crystallizes through comparative analysis. Spire marriages employ identical ledger logic to manufactoria processing, bodies calculated for imperial utility. Reproductive capacity measured for tithe purposes. Matrimonial contracts serving state logistics rather than human connection. The emperor receives tribute through bloodline management rather than direct conscription. But the fundamental equation remains constant. Love converted to capital through systematic calculation. Noble chaplains bless unions with sacred language, while private contracts specify operational exemptions. Wealth purchases distance from consequences affecting lower levels, but the machinery operates consistently across social strata. Only packaging changes. Silk replaces stamped vellum. Ceremony masks surveillance. Privilege disguises dehumanization. How does Clause 44b operate on hab floors among common citizens? What machinery enforces domestic law within Hive households? Arbeit's boots sound different on hab floor gratings. Heavier, deliberate, a metronome for compliance. Purity officers accompany them in dun habits carrying Auspex scanners and brass-bound clipboards, reciting the litany of entry before seals are broken. Imperial law penetrates the domestic sphere with mechanical precision, transforming bedchambers into administrative zones where privacy dissolves under systematic scrutiny. Household audits occur without warning, but always with purpose. Verifying cohabitation against bed assignment logs, checking purity seals above door frames for tampering, reviewing confession entries cross-referenced with ration withdrawal patterns. Surveillance operates through banal mechanisms embedded in daily routine. Ration dispensers cross-reference two-stamp tokens with real-time shift logs, cutting allotments if registered spouses show separate withdrawal patterns. Bed frame pressure sensors prove conjugal compliance by logging weight distribution throughout sleep cycles, sank evenly, or two distinct loads. Hab wardens note temperature variations indicating single occupancy, while servo skulls track movement patterns through corridor monitoring systems. Cohabitation is proven through banality, toothbrush counts, laundry weights, heat signatures on shared bedding. Even affection has a footprint measurable by cogitator. Denunciations lubricate the system with mechanical efficiency. They arrive through Vox channels monitored by servo skulls programmed to recognize matrimonial infractions. Form 9. B submissions trigger automatic investigation schedules, while spouses report each other through coercion, strategic calculation, or genuine devotion to imperial law. A whispered report about unlicensed Medicaid visits, a note about guests sleeping over 3 nights, a rumor of contraceptive herbs. Clause 44. B converts allegation into shared peril, fostering an environment of mutual suspicion where self-preservation often outweighs loyalty. Case study. Manufactoria worker Jorik Voss accumulates 3 missed shifts due to infected wounds from defective rivet gun maintenance. His wife Meren receives denunciation for complicity by silence, failing to report his medical condition within prescribed timeframes. Under Clause 44b, both lose meat rations for a quarter, while Jorik faces reassignment to hazardous plasma conduit maintenance. Meren's confession logs undergo retrospective audit for additional infractions. We meet her in line at dispensers, holding her penalty-stamped 2-stamp token like a relic that will not intercede. The dispenser reads the downgrade without pity, coughing dust instead of protein supplements. Domestic violence sits uneasily within this framework. The state does not speak of safety, it speaks of productivity. Abusers face reassignment to hazardous work assignments, sump reclamation, toxic waste disposal, unstable machinery operation, where accidents are frequent and statistics satisfy morality. Spouses receive penitent dorm shelter, with attached work debt requiring additional shifts to pay accommodation costs. Counseling consists of scripture recitation between shifts, while release requires meeting hours quotas or remarriage. The system prioritizes continued output over human safety, transforming victimhood into new forms of servitude. Widows' tokens emerge from this audit economy as stamped metal plates issued when spouses receive guard conscription orders. Half an aquila, half a ring, they preserve fractions of shared entitlements. 3 months of bunk rights, reduced rations, Medicaid triage access. To redeem, widows present tokens and marriage certificates like supplicants. To extend benefits, many remarry or accept guild sponsorship. The discs are not symbols of grief, but bureaucratic instruments linking survivors to continued state oversight. The silent index surfaces operationally through classified ledgers. Before dawn, audit teams consult its grey columns when scheduling remediation for unwed adults whose names migrate from matrimonial candidate lists to administrative reassignment categories. Transport manifests bear destination codes, while unmarked vehicles arrive during shift changes. Neighbors report empty bunks reassigned within hours, personal effects redistributed through standard salvage protocols. The machinery operates with bureaucratic precision, erasing individuals who fail matrimonial compliance through systematic disappearance. What black markets subvert the registry system, and at what risk? Where do silent index targets actually disappear to? Scarcity breeds subversion with mechanical inevitability. Where the lex connugium strangles access, underground economies emerge like fungi in damp ventilation systems, each growth a wager against hunger, audit, and flame. Forger cells operate in abandoned boiler rooms, etching counterfeit two-stamp tokens with acid needles and magnifying lenses salvaged from broken Auspex units. Genuine discs carry triple microlines beneath aquila wings. Counterfeits manage too. The difference fools drowsy dispensers for days before Arbeit's Auspex reveals the deception. Master engravers speak of their craft like confessors discuss relics, blessing their presses and hiding dies in hollowed bricks, while apprentices practice imperial seals on scrap metal. Black ring marriages bind couples outside registry oversight through ceremonies conducted in maintenance alcoves between shift changes. Crude bands fashioned from insulation wire slide over joined thumbs, while witnesses understand survival economics better than theology. Some represent genuine love matches, workers refusing genetic screening separations, Underhive refugees seeking legitimacy through forged documentation. Most function as survival pacts, shared rations, doubled housing chances, mutual protection against audit teams. Without genetic screening, couples risk redundancy penalties. With counterfeit certificates, they risk execution. Underground midwives operate in red rooms draped with salvaged fabric, their chemical lumens casting bloody shadows across improvised surgical tables. They cut womb cogs free with heated knives, spreading infections that bloom across hab blocks like plague markers. Redemptionist firebrands follow antiseptic scents through ventilation systems, arriving in crimson hoods to burn facilities with cleansing promethium. The cycle repeats with mechanical precision. Demand drives practice, practice triggers crackdown, crackdown creates martyrs inspiring replacement networks. Bodies accumulate as collateral damage in administrative warfare. Guilds operate hidden marriage lotteries disguised as social events, binding promising workers to production lines through matrimonial contracts. Winners receive housing upgrades and ration bonuses, while penalty clauses prevent transfer requests. The system converts romance into recruitment tool, ensuring skilled labor remains within guild territories through emotional bonds rather than legal contracts. Foremen describe arrangements as voluntary, while documenting refusal as grounds for hazardous reassignment. Arbeit's crackdowns employ systematic bait operations, distributing marked counterfeits through informant networks before conducting mass sweeps. Couples caught with flagged tokens face execution for matrimonial fraud under emergency legislation. Moral costs escalate as shared bunks become evidence of criminal conspiracy, affection transformed into grounds for death sentences. Public hangings reinforce conversion rates. One counterfeit disc equals 12 bodies made examples. Crowds learning where mercy ends. Purge reports reveal systematic connections between Underhive violence and sanctioned enforcement. Clan Vint branding appears on corpses processed through Arbeit's morgues. Ritual scarification cited as gang affiliation, justifying summary execution. The brands transform sump bond customs into legal pretexts for population control, while scribes log deaths as criminal elimination. Families receive standardized condolence forms acknowledging administrative necessity. Transport manifests document systematic. Deportation under vague administrative pretexts. Unwed adults disappear through off-world reassignment programs, bearing destination codes corresponding to no known colonies. PIL 09, Pilgrim Quota, Pen 17. Penal Allocation, CR 33, Servitor Fabrication. Shipping records list human cargo alongside industrial supplies, while requisition orders specify labor units rather than passengers. The silent index operates as sorting mechanism, identifying individuals for removal through matrimonial non-compliance. Marriage regulation functions as recruitment filter, separating compliant populations from expendable resources processed through imperial logistics. Are the unwed being deported? or repurposed for Imperial needs? Who authorized purges using clanvint marks as legal justification? Between audits and alarms, humanity persists like weeds through deck plating. Couples trade shifts with smugglers' precision. One takes extra hours on packaging lines so the other can sleep through sirens, meeting in stairwells between rotations to share ration cups and wordless prayers. Hab wardens recognize the pattern. They look away when timing serves mercy, and ledgers can bear small kindnesses. In such crevices, life endures. Widows polish their tokens until stamped aquillas shine like remembered faces. Metal warms in palms while cues inch forward. Grief converting to ritual through repetition. Rub, breathe, recite names of shared shifts. Officially, the discs secure reduced rations and temporary bunks. Unofficially, they purchase small mercies. First place in Medici lines, overlooked infractions. Clerks quietly adding days to deadlines. The true cost records elsewhere. Whispered love vows persist without priests or seals. Fingers touch beneath maintenance grills, while bent nails become rings tied with salvage thread. Improvised shrines hide behind rusted panels, lit by pilfered lumens where couples celebrate secret name days with boiled recyc sugar and shared low sticks passed twice, no more. Before entering production lines, partners trade short litanies. We return with all our fingers. We return with breath. Sometimes it works. The catechism promised 2 as fortress. Practice delivers 2 as co-sentenced. Clause 44. B transforms loyalty into liability, yet necessity breeds adaptation. Some spouses weaponize denunciation systems against genuine abusers, leveraging imperial hunger for order to remove tormentors through hazardous reassignment. Others hide illness like contraband, padding bed frames to fool pressure sensors, staggering dispenser visits so cogitators won't flag reduced intake. Affection learns procedure. Medici technician Yara Voss reprograms womb cogs after Vespers in sub-level clinics. Magnetized stylus and relic-scratched prayers alter cycle reports, buying couples 30 days before auditors investigate. She calls it triage for souls, knowing discovery costs more than license. Lashes, labor penance, perhaps quiet vanishing reserved for professionals embarrassing the mathematics. She works anyway, counting weeks instead of absolution. Memory threads through machinery. The mass rite persists in dormitory whispers, subtle green lumens marking robust couples, blast doors labeled auxiliar processing, midnight summons with bags pre-packed just in case. The silent index never sleeps, names sliding across columns while lifts hum at dawn, bunks cooling before anyone asks questions aloud. In this economy, even rumors become coping rituals. These represent small resistances that preserve human shape within dehumanizing systems. They remain fragile, procedural, costly. They endure because nothing else will, maintaining emotional connection through adaptation to surveillance requirements while systematic opposition grinds forward. Why were robust couples specifically marked during the rite ceremony? What does a widow's token actually purchase beyond rations? Administrator memoranda, retrieved from misfiled folios bearing oil stains and classification seals, expose the mathematics with brutal clarity. Spikes in registered unions precede mobilization waves by 60 to 90 days across 17 documented cycles. The correlation proves systematic. Married couples stabilize production output during initial phases through shared housing efficiency and reduced absenteeism, then supply predictable widows and orphans for systematic reallocation when guard levies arrive. Marriage functions as a sophisticated logistics instrument, creating renewable human resources through emotional bonds that survive conscription. The mass rite diversions witnessed in Chapter 7 crystallize as silent levies operating through procedural camouflage. Auxiliar contracts, pre-printed behind blessing forges, bind co-liable spouses to voluntary service immediately post-vow. Refusal triggers Clause 44. B penalties threatening household starvation through ration downgrades and housing evictions. Couples marked by green lumens receive escort through blast doors not to conjugal quarters, but processing centers where matrimonial joy converts to military obligation within hours. Consent becomes procedural fiction, extracted under threat of shared deprivation. The silent index resolves from rumor into operational routing table. Cross-referenced transport manifests reveal systematic sorting. PEN 17 designates penal battalions, where unwed adults march into training blocks, with numbers replacing names. SER 33 routes candidates for servitor conversion, transforming deficit citizens into compliant engines. PIL 09 loads pilgrim transports bound for unlisted worlds carrying human cargo alongside industrial supplies. Matrimonial non-compliance becomes selection criteria for expendability across imperial supply chains. Womb cog counters, installed with medica blessings, reveal themselves as reproductive meters, serving imperial logistics rather than maternal care. Aggregate telemetry feeds governor dashboards displaying replacement rate shortfalls by sector and shift rotation. When fertility lines dip, edicts couple birth quotas to guard tithe obligations, meet reproductive targets, earn guild tax remissions, miss them, face surcharge schedules, and increased levy assessments. The womb becomes calibration dial in machinery, measuring war readiness through mandatory intimacy. Spire exemptions confirm systematic class-based circumvention. Noble houses purchase freedom from Clause 44B through sealed indulgences, while donating second-born to scholar progenium, pious laundering of surplus heirs, clearing ledger pressure, while preserving names and holdings. Costs export downward to retainers, absorbing penalties, as if sin transmitted through wage disparity. The edicts never vanish. They redirect along gradients of power. Widows' tokens close the exploitation loop through systematic bereavement management. Redemption records show 90-day windows purchasing temporary bunk rights and reduced rations before automatic eviction unless remarriage or guild sponsorship resets timers. Administrators plot expected churn through stacked graphs, assigning dormitory beds to newly bereaved before incense cools. The discs function not as memorial, but as countdown mechanisms ensuring renewable resource cycling. The comprehensive machine operates with elegant brutality. Marriage certificates create stable production units and surveillance networks. Womb cogs provide reproductive telemetry. Clause 44B supplies coercive force. The silent index handles demographic waste. Widows' tokens guarantee turnover. Each component serves imperial war requirements while wearing sacred language. What appeared as mercy resolves into metering. What seemed sanctity proves scheduling. The city's heart beats not with devotion, but with the cold rhythm of a pump, moving people like coolant through failing pipes. Measuring love in ledger columns, serving the emperor's endless appetite for bodies. What becomes of marriage certificates when unions fail imperial ledgers? How do people preserve memory within systems designed for forgetting? Incense grows thinner in Basilica Registry H17. Sacred smoke losing ground to industrial exhaust through cracked ventilators. A widow approaches the brass grill, extending her two-stamp token with practiced resignation. The clerk weighs it like industrial slag, metal content, Aquila clarity, cogitator strip integrity, before exchanging it for 3 low sticks. The disc clatters into a bin of similar discards, while servo skulls update ledgers, erasing another marriage from active rosters. Through stained glass depicting saints as foremen, a scholar progenium column marches past in grey uniforms. One child clutches a ring fashioned from bent nails and salvaged thread, inheritance from parents processed through systems we have documented. The formation disappears into morning smog, while new queues form beneath oil-blackened aquillas. Our investigation reveals marriage as sophisticated logistics instrument serving imperial war requirements. The system operates through interconnected mechanisms. Clause 44B's shared burden functions as collective punishment, ensuring compliance through mutual vulnerability. The Silent Index sorts unwed adults for penal battalions, servitor conversion, or pilgrim transports. Clan Vintbrands provide legal pretexts for sanctioned violence, while wombcogs meter reproduction like industrial output. The mass rite stands exposed as mobilization theatre converting sacred ceremony into recruitment operation. Spire exemptions confirm systematic circumvention purchase through indulgences, while penalties flow downward to retainers and workers. Survival wisdom passes through whispered conversations between habwives who understand that endurance requires adaptation to machinery designed for consumption. Hide sickness until shifts require explanation. Share denunciations only upward, never horizontal, never down. Keep spare tokens when possible. Clerks make mistakes. Memorize vows completely. They serve as passphrases during audits. Count cycles privately. Wombcogs lie to protect quotas. Trade shifts like contraband. Love like ration heat. If doors marked auxilia open, carry nothing you can't lift with one hand. The widow lights her first low stick, inhaling grief converted to commodity. Near radiators, stamped vellum curls as ink flakes like dried blood, while couples clutch fresh applications. The machinery grinds forward with perpetual hunger, processing human connection through administrative filters that convert love to logistics, sacred bonds to supply chain management. Memory persists alongside the grinding machine, preserved in bent nail rings and whispered names, in shared shifts and polished tokens, in children who carry fragments of parents processed through systems, measuring souls like rivets. The Imperium's appetite proves endless, its methods sanctified through theological language masking logistical function. Yet humanity endures within the mechanism, finding crevices where affection survives audit, where connection transcends surveillance, where love persists despite machinery designed to consume it. The queue advances with tired grace, while new certificates await stamps that will bind bodies to quotas serving the Emperor's endless war.